So business with Stephen then, talking Greece, as we said before. We were joking just a moment ago. Crucial week for Greece. We do say it every week, don't we, Stephen?
Yes, we do. But I can tell you that it is getting... The problem is the longer this goes on, the more important every one of these meetings become, because Athens runs closer and closer to running out of money, which is what Natalie was just telling us in Athens. We've had these talks go on in Brussels now for several months, trying to get Greece and its international lenders to agree on a list of economic reforms. Today's meeting of Eurozone finance ministers is expected to acknowledge progress in that process, but not enough to release that much needed bailout loan to Athens. It's 7.2 billion euros, and it really does need that money. Mainly, well, partly because of the payments that it has to its creditors. We've got that payment tomorrow to the International Monetary Fund of more than 750 million euros. That's the biggest single repayment that Greece has to make to the IMF so far this year. It's left the Athens government scraping the barrel to find the cash, including a controversial demand for local authorities and mayors to hand over their spare funding to the central government, as Delano de Souza now explains.
With billions to reimburse, filling the state's coffers has become a priority for Athens. After rising to power in January, the government has ordered town halls across Greece to hand over the cash reserves. Mayors will get the money back if Athens is in a position to reimburse. The state says it's only willing to pay for waste collection, electricity and municipal wages.
So over here we are on one of the 52 locked playgrounds. If you can see the lock, because this is not a certified playground. We do not have any guarantees that the city will take the money back as it paid. Those two things are creating a lot of uncertainty, and you know, we have been elected to run our cities, not to run the government.
But not everyone is giving in, saying they have more urgent priorities. Mayor Andreas Kondilis said he'd endanger public safety if his town's beachfront isn't repaired, a job which could be placed on hold indefinitely if he hands over the cash.
All the mayors said, we want to help Greece. We want to help our country. Stay in the euro, stay in the Eurozone. So we will help the governments, but we need to understand in what way and for how long. It's very important for us. This money, it's our livelihood.
It's unclear how many mayors across the country have obeyed the government's decree, but it's once again got many in Greece asking, what's next?
Is that a story then, Stephen, making waves on the markets at all?
Not on the stock markets yet today anyway. In Asia, we've seen the markets focusing mostly on a cut in interest rates announced by the Chinese central bank over the weekend. It's the third time in 6 months they've cut rates. That's helping things, as you can see, in Shanghai up over 2%. Shanghai saw some pretty dramatic falls last week, so this is starting to gain back some of the losses that we'd seen. In Japan, big companies news moving the markets. We'll get to that in a minute, but first we're going to take a look at what's happening on the currency markets at this point in the morning, watching the value of the euro as those talks over Greece set to take place later. We've seen the euro down slightly against the dollar in trading today, down by about 0.5%, but that's also partly due to the other side of it. The dollar is stronger because of good economic data that came out of the US on Friday. We'll move on now to look at some of those companies' news, and we'll start with shares in the Japanese electronics company Sharp. They've plunged by almost 25% after it was reported the company planned to shrink its capital. The move would allow Sharp to reclassify itself as a medium-sized company in Japan and benefit from tax advantages. The firm's due to announce the move as part of a giant overhaul later this week. Another Japanese company having a bad day is Toshiba. Its shares have tumbled after it withdrew its profit forecast for the year and said it won't be paying shareholders a dividend. Toshiba says it's discovered accounting problems on a number of its infrastructure projects. And China's appetite for smartphones seems to have reached its peak. Figures from the International Data Corp show that for the first time in 6 years, shipments of smartphones fell between January and March by more than 4%. More than 90% of Chinese consumers now have a smartphone, which is hitting the demand for first-time buyers.
Finally, it does seem as though we've had a lot of depressing news on the programme today, so this is perhaps going to cheer you up a little bit. French shareholders less happy to pay big bucks to company bosses. That is, of course, unless you happen to be a company boss, I suppose. Yeah,
exactly, and we'll hope, for the purpose of this conversation, that they're not. European law allows shareholders to have a say on pay, it's called. So that means that they can vote on proposals to pay bonuses of more than a year's salary to senior executives. But figures from Prox Invest, reported by the Financial Times show that more shareholders in France are choosing to vote against those pay packets. Overall, their data says approval has fallen from over 90% to around 80%. This is the chairman of Danone. His name is Frank Ribaud. 47% of shareholders in the company voted against his pay packet. At Renault, they weren't as happy either. 42% of shareholders voted against the pay awarded to CEO Carlos Ghosn. Now, it's an interesting one because it's coming at a time that there's this change in attitude towards big French companies. The French government's getting involved and some of their companies try to protect shareholder voting rights. So an interesting time to be a shareholder in a French company and perhaps a less fun time to be a boss.
Very, very true. I'm just relieved we don't get to vote on each other's salaries.
I'm very relieved about that, yes.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense to do with business on France 24.